So I went to go see that new Star Wars movie. I thought it was pretty okay. Then I went home and I checked out to see the reviews. You know, I want to see how people feel about it. Okay, pretty good, not bad. Holy shit! The audience is quite literally divided. People either love this movie or they hate it. You either think it's the best movie since Empire, or you think Rian Johnson violated you and murdered your childhood right in front of you. I'm not exaggerating, people are actually saying this. I mean, look at this. The official Star Wars Twitter posted a happy birthday message for Rian Johnson, and there are over 500 comments arguing about how he ruined Star Wars. Come on guys, it's really not that big a deal. So why is this? Why are people unable to come to some common ground with this movie? I personally actually liked the movie, but I acknowledge that it has a lot of dumb shit in it. And that's why people are so divided. The movie has equal good and equal bad. So I'm gonna go ahead and talk about The Curious Case of The Last Jedi. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that The Last Jedi can be described as a bad, good movie. Much like how The Room or Troll 2 are good, bad movies, aka bad movies that are enjoyable, The Last Jedi is a good movie with bad qualities. There are a lot of great themes and stories in this movie, but then you have some really dumb shit too. A lot of people think that the only people who don't like this movie are the people who didn't get their fan theories confirmed, and that's really not true. The movie's not perfect, and there are a lot of people who just don't like it because they don't like messy plots. And I think that's fair. And that's where we get into the first group of people that we're talking about today. The first group of people that do not like The Last Jedi. People who can't overlook the dumb shit. And I'm not saying these people are wrong. If I wasn't a huge Star Wars shill, then I'd be in this group myself. There are elements that are honestly pretty messy and just flat out weird. Now, I've only seen the movie twice so far, but I'm gonna do my best to run through some of the honest flaws that the movie has. Like I said, I enjoyed this movie, so I'm gonna go over the good stuff later, but I wanna get the bad stuff out of the way. Number one, Finn is not used properly. Now, this is hard to explain. I'd say he was underused, but he gets a decent amount of screen time in this movie. Finn was more or less a full half of the story in the last movie, and he was honestly my favorite character in The Force Awakens. I was really into his arc about not running away and standing up for himself, paired with his story about finding someone or something to fight for other than himself. But now, this movie has the same exact arc for Finn. In this movie, the first thing he tries to do is run away. Now, yeah, I get he wants to help Rey, but it feels like a step back for his character. In the end of the movie, he decides to try and kill himself for his friends, but even that felt out of place, and I, for one, am glad that it was a fake out. People are saying they wished he actually died so it would make his arc more coherent, but I think this is completely wrong. This should not have been his arc in the first place. If he died, it wouldn't have felt like a cohesive story at all. It would have felt like they just threw Finn away. It would have felt pretty cheap. But I'll explain more of that a little later on. Number two, too many jokes. I don't have much to say here because it's a pretty simple concept. Now personally, I never laughed even one time in the theater. There were some moments that I liked and others I could have done without. Now on the whole, I think it's much more toned down when compared to The Force Awakens, which can be pretty cringy on repeat viewings. Seeing the movie a second time, the jokes aren't completely obnoxious, but they do show up in moments where the story could use a more serious tone. Number three, the whole plot is kind of pointless. People have complained that the story is dumb because the First Order should be able to catch up to the Resistance ships and just blow them up. They're upset because it's basically a long chase scene. That's the whole movie, just one big, long chase scene. I'd like to remind you guys that Empire was also a really long chase scene, but we're not gonna worry about that. However, we also have the story of Laura Dern's character, and it's kind of annoying. Laura Dern doesn't tell anyone on her crew her plan for their survival. That's pretty stupid. Here's the thing, this is where my initial idea comes out again. This is both good and bad. The movie is about failure, that's a constant theme throughout it, which is good for the second act in a trilogy. Yoda literally shows up in this movie to tell the audience that the theme is failure, and how to take that failure and learn from it. The movie focuses on every character failing and learning from it, and the only character who doesn't learn anything is Kylo Ren, and he suffers for it, ultimately getting defeated in the end of the movie. Now, while this is a good theme, I don't think it was executed as well as it could be. While it is a very interesting commentary on these characters, I don't think the characters learned the right things. To further explain, I bring up number 4, Poe Dameron. Poe is a fucking idiot in this movie, and while I like that he's now shown to be a dumb frat boy who just wants to blow stuff up, it also leads to some problems in the storytelling. The first scene in this movie shows Poe causing the death of a majority of the Resistance fleet. He gets a slap on the wrist, but that's it. Then he pulls a fucking space mutiny and tries to take over the fleet for himself. Then he gets another slap on the wrist, and that's it. Other characters even consider him a hero, and they comment on how they like him and his tenacity. But as someone watching this movie waiting for a character to be punished for their horrible deeds, it's a little unsatisfying. He is taught that running in guns blazing and dying as a martyr is not always a good plan. He learns this by the end of the movie, but by the time the speeder scene happens and Finn decides to die a martyr, then you as a moviegoer kind of realize that if Finn did blow himself up, it actually would have been a good solution to their problem. But it also would have been narratively unsatisfying if Finn killed himself. So you see how this is kind of awkward? These characters are trying to learn different things, and it's not really working. And while it is an interesting meta-narrative, it's not done in the best way. While I like the attempt to tell a story based around the failures of every single character, I can see why many people don't like the way it was executed. But none of this stuff is as bad as number 5, the dumbass casino planet. In the first half of the movie, Finn and Rose go to the fucking golden saucer from Final Fantasy. This is the subplot that everybody basically agrees could have been skipped entirely. Even people like me who like this movie don't really like everything that's going on here. I like Benicio del Toro's character, I like, the stuff with the little kids that comes back at the end, but I really don't think we needed an alien horse race. Now, Star Wars movies all have one scene or subplot, which I like to affectionately call the obligatory dumb Star Wars adventure shit, or the ODSWAS for short. It's not shorter at all. Every single Star Wars movie has a dumb scene or subplot that is completely pointless, and it's almost become tradition at this point. And it all started back with A New Hope, which has a scene where our heroes are attacked by a giant octopus in a dumpster. It happens in the middle of the movie, and it kinda comes out of nowhere. But it didn't stop there. In Empire, our heroes are attacked by a giant space worm. Now, I actually think this is fine because it allows us time to step away from the ongoing chase featured in the movie, and it gives the characters time to interact. But nonetheless, it does kinda come out of nowhere. In Return of the Jedi, you get a whole subplot centered around fucking Care Bears. In The Phantom Menace, you get the Gungan homeworld, and you get the pod racing scene. In Attack of the Clones, it's the factory scene. In Revenge of the Sith, it's the lizard versus hamster wheel scene. In Rogue One, it's this fucking thing. I have no idea why this is in the movie. I can make excuses for almost all the other shit, but I have no idea what the fuck this is and why it's in the movie. Anyway, The Force Awakens has the Rathtar scene. Funnily enough, in the deleted scenes of The Force Awakens, there was another ODSWAS. I'm sorry, I'm not gonna say that again. This is a mistake. After Han dies, there was gonna be a dumb speeder chase to explain how Rey and Finn got to the forest. I am very glad this wasn't in the movie. These scenes are kind of a staple in Star Wars movies, but I still think we should stop putting them in Star Wars movies, because they always bog down the story, even in the smallest examples. The alien horse race scene in The Last Jedi is almost unbearable, and this is coming from the guy who makes a lot of excuses for Star Wars. Now the thing is, it's not as bad as pod racing, and it doesn't last nearly as long. It doesn't really kill the movie at all, but it and the entire story of the casino planet are all still very pointless. These are very valid complaints about the movie. However, with all these valid complaints, we also have some invalid complaints. Y'all know I like talking about these. We've explained the first group of people who don't like the movie, and while there are more flaws that I could go through, I'd be here all day if I did that. I consider this first group of people the rational critics. But now we have the second group of people. Angry Star Wars fans. Now I said earlier that it's a common misconception that the only people who don't like this movie are angry Star Wars nerds. And it is a common misconception. Most of the people who don't like the movie just don't like the movie. But there's still a whole lot of people who are just really mad because they love Star Wars. These people are mad at the following things. Number 1, Luke and how he is portrayed in this movie. People are upset because they think Luke Skywalker is acting out of character. The reason they think this is because they want Luke Skywalker to act like book Luke Skywalker. Luke Skywalker from the old Legends canon was completely different than the one we get in this movie. Luke in the books is overpowered and unstoppable. So when you learn that in this movie Luke tried to kill a youngling, Some people aren't gonna take too kindly to that. But in my opinion, this subplot is one of the best parts of the movie. Luke explains that it was a fleeting thought and that he regretted it immediately, feeling a lot of shame for what he was doing, showing that while he is wise, he isn't perfect. If Luke was just this wise sage on a mountain and then he trained Rey with no questions asked and that was it, then it would have been the most boring and predictable shit ever. I like that he's an asshole. I like that he has realistic flaws. And I love the themes of heroism that we see in his story. If you told me that the new Star Wars movie would have had a new, unique character arc for Luke Skywalker, I would have called you a dummy. But it's true. In this movie, Luke struggles with his status as a living legend. He resents it for most of the movie. However, he realizes that being a hero is a great thing, and just the concept alone can be used as a weapon and a cry to rally people together. This is shown in the end with the little slave kids telling the story about how Luke basically fights off an entire army on his own, which, ironically, is something that he says he isn't going to do in the beginning of the movie. This is good writing, guys. I'm sorry to break it to you. He has incredible growth in this movie, and he goes out in the only way I would accept. His death in front of the twin sons is one of the most moving death scenes I've seen in a movie. Anyone who says Luke died like a little bitch is a fucking idiot who probably wanted him to flip around and fight a bunch of AT-ATs. Number 2, Snoke and Rey get no explanation. I'm grouping these together because they follow the same idea. People are mad because Snoke just dies and we don't learn anything about him. People are also mad because Rey's parents are nobody special. They're desert hobos who abandoned her. I can't understand the mentality of wanting everybody to be related to somebody super important or to just be someone that you've heard of before. It makes the universe way smaller if Rey is just Obi-Wan's daughter or something. It's also really fucking dumb. It would have been really bad writing. Also, it kind of plays off of your expectations, which is something that this movie does very well. In Star Wars, you expect the I am your father reveal, but you don't get that in this movie. It's okay to have your headcanon and want things to be connected in some greater scope, but I don't understand getting pissed off because of it. It makes more sense narratively to show the story of Kylo Ren and Rey in this way. Kylo Ren's the guy who comes from a family of iconic heroes, but he turns out to be a huge villain. Rey comes from nothing and she turns out to be a great hero. It also works towards making the Force magical like it used to be. The Force can rise up and grow stronger in anybody, regardless of their bloodline. This movie mystifies the Force again, and I think it's been a long time since we've had that. As for Snoke, I will sort of agree that it would have been nice to have some acknowledgement on why he is so powerful. I don't want to know who he is, but from a storytelling perspective, it would have been more satisfying to build him up even more and then kill him off, just to really freak people out. But that being said, I still like it the way it is. Snoke's existence is used to develop the characters that we already know. We've had lots of time developing Kylo Ren and Rey, and using this monumental event to push their development and story a little further is just genius. If you're mad because we don't know anything about Snoke, well, I'd like to remind you that we didn't know anything about fucking Palpatine until the prequels came out. In Return of the Jedi, you're shown the most powerful, most evil wizard who also controls the entire galaxy. You're told nothing about him, and then a half-dead cyborg who's missing a hand throws him into a hole and he blows up. Don't complain about Snoke if you think that this is okay. You don't need to be right in order to enjoy this story. It doesn't need to be predictable for you to be satisfied by it. Number 3, the Hyperdrive Kamikaze scene. There are some people who are claiming that it is impossible to blow up a fleet by slamming into it with the Hyperdrive. To those people, I have this to say.
You're a creep! Go away! We're having a good time until you showed up, jeepers!
No, but all joking aside, shut the fuck up, you goddamn idiots! It's a movie about space wizards. There are no fucking rules. Stop making shit up to be mad about. I'm okay if you complain about the plot holes. Complain about the weird editing, the bad ADR, the wooden acting. That's fine. Oh wait, people don't complain about those things. Those are normal things that are bad and wrong with the movie, but people ignore those in order to talk about shit like this. Analyze a film like a regular person and don't pick apart shit with made-up fantasy facts. Oh, but hey, if you want me to use made-up Star Wars facts, how about in the book Tarkin, where they say that a ship with hyperdrive can blow basically anything up. In the extended universe, they talk about it all the time. Hell, in the first Star Wars movie that ever came out, they literally tell you that it's extremely dangerous to use hyperdrive in the first place.
Traveling through hyperspace ain't like dusting crops, boy.
Oh boy. One of these days, I'm gonna have a heart attack in a Star Wars video. So there are a lot of things to complain about as far as The Last Jedi is concerned. Some of these points are valid and some are not so valid. Like I said, to the people who honestly don't like the plot holes or the bad writing or any of that stuff, I hear you. Really, I do. This movie is flawed, but I do think it does something special. I'm gonna say something daring, but I honestly believe that every Star Wars movie sucks. I am one of the biggest Star Wars fans, but you gotta admit, this shit's dumb. But it's still awesome. We just make different excuses for the Star Wars movies that we enjoy. I've talked to people who hate The Last Jedi, but then they say they love the prequels. They come up with excuses for why those movies are good. In my video on The Force Awakens, I addressed this issue a bit more, so I'm not going to go into it again, but basically, this is the kind of series where you really need to just accept the dumb stuff and enjoy the stuff that you like. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about why people like this movie. First of all, this movie changes the Star Wars formula. People got pissed at The Force Awakens because it was a ripoff of other Star Wars movies. It didn't try anything new. But now people got mad because The Last Jedi changed everything. I personally thought that the story was going to be pretty predictable. I thought I was going to get a rehash of Empire Strikes Back. I thought Rey was going to train with Luke and then leave Luke to save her friends and fight Kylo Ren, and that would have been it. But then when that second half hits and Snoke gets bodied, I went bananas. This movie challenges your expectations for a Star Wars movie, and people say Rogue One is the most daring Star Wars movie, but I completely disagree. It does not do anything special as far as narrative strokes go. There also aren't any overarching themes, and this is kind of how Star Wars has been for a long time now. Star Wars hasn't had anything special to say since Return of the Jedi, a movie with themes and concepts. I've explained the concept of failure and how it does or doesn't work in this movie, but I also brought up the theme of heroism with Luke. I'm someone who considers Luke Skywalker to be one of the best characters in fictional media, and I like how his status as one of the most iconic heroes is used as a plot device in this movie. In movies like Man of Steel and The Dark Knight Rises, the idea of a hero as a symbol is used, but in my opinion it's not grounded in a human element, so it doesn't connect very well. Superman and Batman enjoy being symbols of hope and justice, and as such it doesn't have anything to attach the audience to this meta-narrative. With Luke resenting his status and eventually growing to accept it, it becomes more compelling. Along with this theme is the idea of good and evil. Benicio del Toro's character flat out tells us that good and evil don't exist in this world. However, Star Wars has famously been about good versus evil, light versus dark, and many people have cited this as a major flaw against the series. Some of the best Star Wars stories are the ones that look at different concepts. The Last Jedi is interesting because it actually flips everything around. This movie has heroes who act like selfish assholes and villains who do heroic things. The only character who was pure good or evil was Snoke, and you see how that worked out for him. The Last Jedi also changes the status quo for the final film. The First Order is now the dominant force in the galaxy, but it's being run by an emotionally confused lunatic and screaming Bill Weasley. Plus, the Resistance has mostly been destroyed and has to be reformed as a new rebellion. With all these classic characters dead, the new heroes are now left to run the show. There's no Han, Luke, or Leia to turn towards for guidance. We can finally get a movie where the new characters can do everything on their own. This movie changed concepts that audiences found comfort in. Unfallible heroes, big evil villains, and a big lightsaber fight at the end. None of these things are in the movie, and I guess it makes sense that a lot of people are a little upset by this. But if you ask me, this is exactly what Star Wars needed. I've been on record saying that I enjoy getting a new Star Wars movie every year. I just like Star Wars a lot, I'm not going to explain myself. However, I would have been very disappointed if Star Wars just kept churning out average action-adventure movies every year instead of interesting ones. The Last Jedi breaks the monotony of Star Wars, for better or for worse. I and a lot of other people complain about the formulaic Marvel movies, and if Star Wars started doing that, I would have been really bummed out. But now I can comfortably say that Star Wars can continue to surprise me, and honestly, that's all I wanted. If I were to personally rate this movie, I'd probably give it a 7 out of 10. A good 7 out of 10. I will also say that I hold this Star Wars movie a little higher than most of the other films. But hey, everybody's ranking of Star Wars is completely different. That's just how Star Wars is. Now you guys know I usually don't ask for engagement on my videos because I think it's dumb, but I am interested to see what your rankings of all the Star Wars movies are. The fact of the matter is, Star Wars has never been this divisive before, but I'd like to leave you with one idea. When Empire came out, it was met with a little bit of a mixed reception. Some critics did not really enjoy the darker tone, and they criticized the structure of the story. Some of these reviews are archived, and they're pretty interesting to read. But look at Empire Now. It's seen to be the best one by most people. So I implore everybody to sit on The Last Jedi and see how it does over time. I think as people rewatch it and see past the flaws, the ones who hate it will kind of settle down a bit, and the ones who blindly love it will notice that it has some problems. Eventually everybody will be able to join in together and say, The Last Jedi? Yeah, it was okay. The porgs were cute. Whoa, what's this? Who are these guys? Oh, look, it's our patrons, and I'd like to thank them for going ahead and giving us money so I can make videos like this. Thank you very much. I like you. I like you a lot. If you liked the video, you can subscribe if you want. If you didn't like the video, don't send me any messages on Twitter, because I'm already getting a lot of those. But yeah, I'm probably gonna go watch the movie again. Hate me if you want, but I just like having a good time. Alright, bye guys.